You can't read that. The CEO sneered, his lips curling into that condescending smirk I'd seen one too many times from men in suits who thought the world revolved around their expensive shoes and boardroom tables. But he didn't know who he was talking to. He didn't know that the quiet waitress standing in front of him, hair tied back, cheap uniform wore, knout shoes, had a secret. A secret that would turn his arrogance into his downfall. Because when I translated that contract, I didn't just read the words he was trying to hide. I rewrote my future, and by the time I walked out of that room, I wasn't a waitress anymore. I was a billionaire. Now tell me, if someone underestimated you like that, would you let them walk away unscathed, or would you make them choke on their own arrogance? It all started on an ordinary Tuesday night, or at least, it was supposed to be. I'd been working double shifts at a high-end restaurant downtown for months, barely sleeping, saving every penny I could. Life wasn't easy. I was 20, broke, and constantly one mistake away from eviction. My mom had fallen ill a few years back, and every cent I earned went to her treatment. I wasn't ashamed of my job, but I was tired of being invisible to the rich people I served, tired of smiling through insults disguised as jokes, tired of pretending I didn't understand the whispers they thought I couldn't hear. You see, I'm multilingual, fluent in 5 languages. My dad was a linguist, and he made sure I learned every word, every accent, every nuance. But after he died, life forced me to trade books for bills. Still, that knowledge stayed with me, quietly waiting for the day it would matter again. That night, the restaurant was buzzing with noise and perfume and money. A private table had been booked under the name of Mr. Caldwell, a CEO of some powerful multinational tech conglomerate. Everyone was nervous. The man was known for his temper and his "don't talk to me unless I talk to you" attitude. The manager told me, "Sarah, be careful with him. He's important. Don't mess this up." I nodded, even though I didn't care much. Important people didn't scare me anymore, they bored me. Still, when Caldwell walked in, surrounded by 3 assistants and a man in a crisp gray suit, I felt a chill. He carried himself like he owned everything in sight, his voice sharp and cold. He didn't even look at the waitstaff. He just waved his hand like we were part of the decor. They ordered wine, expensive dishes, and laughed loudly, their voices echoing off the marble walls. I tried to focus on my work, but something caught my attention. The man in the gray suit, clearly a lawyer, pulled out a thick folder, placed it on the table, and whispered something to Caldwell. The CEO frowned and began flipping through pages. That's when things got interesting. A young man, probably in his late 20s, entered the restaurant looking nervous but determined. He sat at the same table, opposite Caldwell. I later learned he was an app developer, someone who had built a revolutionary AI translation software and had come to negotiate a deal with Caldwell's company. As I refilled their glasses, I couldn't help overhearing bits of their conversation. The young man sounded unsure, hesitant. "I just want to make sure the terms are fair," he said softly. Caldwell chuckled, of course. You'll get your share. Just sign where I tell you." He pushed the contract forward. But here's the thing, the document wasn't in English. It was in Mandarin. The developer frowned. I can't read that," he said. Caldwell smiled like a snake. "Oh, it's just the translated version for our partners. Don't worry, it says exactly what we discussed." But it didn't. I could see the title from where I stood, and I knew enough Mandarin to recognize it wasn't a simple partnership agreement. It was a full ownership transfer. I froze, holding the wine bottle midair, my heart pounding. I could have ignored it. I could have walked away like every other employee, who pretended not to hear the rich lie to the desperate. But something about the kid's nervous face, his bitten nails, the hope in his eyes broke me. I stepped closer, pretending to adjust the tablecloth. Caldwell noticed and snapped, "What are you doing? Back off." But before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. "Sir, that's not a partnership contract," I said quietly. "That document gives your company full rights to his software." The entire table went silent. Caldwell's face turned red. "Excuse me," he barked. "You can't read that." I met his eyes and said, "Actually, I can." His assistants exchanged nervous glances. The developer looked at me like I'd just thrown him a lifeline. Caldwell leaned forward, smirking. "Oh really, a waitress who reads Mandarin? Don't make me laugh." I took a deep breath. Not just Mandarin, also French, German, Spanish, and Japanese. And yes, that contract is lying to him. Caldwell stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed, but the lawyer's shifting expression told me I was right. "Fine," I said. "Let's find out. Give me the first page." He threw it toward me, probably thinking I'd embarrass myself. But as I read, my voice steady and loud, the truth unfolded. Every clause, every sneaky loophole. It was all designed to strip the young man of ownership the moment he signed. The developer looked horrified. "You were going to steal my company," he said, his voice shaking. Caldwell glared at him. "Business is business, kid. You should have done your homework." I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't sorry. He was angry that he got caught. Get out. He told me, but I didn't move. Instead, I handed the contract back to the developer and said, "You should get a lawyer, a real one." He nodded and quickly gathered his things, leaving without signing a thing. Caldwell was fuming. "You just cost me millions," he spat. "Do you know who I am?" I smiled slightly. "Someone who just got outsmarted by a waitress." I thought that was the end of it. I expected to be fired, maybe even blacklisted, but what happened next changed everything. The next morning, the developer came back to the restaurant. He waited until my shift ended and asked to speak to me privately. "You saved me last night," he said. "That company would have destroyed everything I worked for. I don't even know how to thank you." I shrugged it off, but he wasn't done. "You said you know multiple languages, right?" I nodded, he smiled. "Then maybe you can help me. I need a partner." I blinked. "Partner?" He nodded again. "I'm rebuilding my company and I need someone I can trust. Someone who can help me expand globally. You understand languages, cultures, and most importantly, people. Let's build something together." I didn't say yes right away. It sounded insane, a waitress partnering with a tech genius, but something about his sincerity drew me in. I quit the restaurant a week later and joined him. At first, it was small late nights, instant noodles, and countless lines of code. I wasn't a developer, but I was his translator, his negotiator, his strategist. I handled communication with investors, translated proposals, and built partnerships in countries he couldn't even pronounce. Every deal we made, every investor we landed, pushed us closer to success. Within 2 years, our AI software became the global standard for real-time translation. By the time Caldwell realized what we had built, it was too late. His own company tried to buy us out, but we refused. He even offered me a blank check during a conference in Singapore. "You could have anything you want," he said, his tone dripping with fake charm. I smiled sweetly. "Funny, I already do." He didn't like that. He stormed off, and I'll admit, it felt good. I went from wiping tables to being on Forbes' cover as one of the youngest billionaires in the language tech industry. But even with all the money and success, the thing that stuck with me wasn't the wealth. It was that moment when a man looked down on me thinking I was too small, too uneducated, too poor to matter, and I proved him wrong with nothing but knowledge. So that's the situation I was in. A waitress turned CEO, thanks to a single act of courage and a bit of linguistic skill. But tell me, if you were in my place that night, if you overheard someone being scammed and you knew you could stop it, would you have spoken up? Would you have risked your job, your safety, everything for a stranger? Before I tell you how it all ended, I want you to pause and really think about that. Because it's easy to say you'd do the right thing until you realize what it might cost you. The final twist came a few months after our company went public. We were invited to a major tech summit in New York. Guess who was on the guest list? Caldwell. I saw his name and couldn't help but laugh. Fate really does have a sense of humor. When we arrived, cameras flashed everywhere. Caldwell was already on stage, giving a speech about innovation and ethics. The irony almost made me choke. When it was my turn to speak, I walked up, my heart pounding, and looked straight at him as I began. "A few years ago," I said, "I was a waitress serving coffee to a man who told me I couldn't read. He was wrong, because words can change the world, if you understand them." The audience applauded, but Caldwell's face went pale. After the event, he approached me, pretending to be cordial. "Congratulations," he said stiffly. "You've done well for yourself." I smiled. "Thanks to you." That was the last time I ever saw him. His company eventually collapsed under fraud investigations. Ours kept growing. We expanded into education, healthcare, and accessibility, breaking language barriers for millions of people. My mom got the best treatment possible, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. I had proven that intelligence doesn't come from a degree or a title. It comes from the courage to act when it matters. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed quiet that night. Maybe I'd still be a waitress, invisible, surviving instead of living. But fate gave me a choice, and I took it. I've learned that sometimes opportunity doesn't knock. It whispers, disguised as a moment of moral clarity. And if you're brave enough to listen, it can change everything. So tell me, who were you rooting for in this story? The CEO who thought he could buy integrity, or the waitress who knew the value of words? Because for me, that night wasn't just about translating a contract. It was about translating power from the hands of the corrupt to someone who finally deserved it. If you were on my side, like this video and share it with someone who's ever been underestimated. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have spoken up or walked away? I'll see you all in the next story.